When I started watching Spain at this World Cup, I thought I knew exactly what I was going to see. A team that wanted the ball, lots of short passes, lots of possession, and to be fair, that's exactly what happened. But after a few matches, I realised I was paying attention to the wrong team. It wasn't Spain that caught my eye, it was their opponents. Austria didn't look like Austria. Portugal didn't really look like Portugal. Belgium couldn't create the open game they usually thrive in. France spent far less time attacking than I expected. And then came the final. Argentina, a team that had solved almost every problem this tournament had thrown at them. Different opponents, different systems, different game states. They always seemed to find an answer. So, naturally, I expected them to challenge Spain in a completely different way. Instead, I found myself asking a different question. Why was Argentina reacting to Spain, instead of making Spain react to them? At first, I assumed the answer was simple: possession. But the more matches I watched, the less convincing that explanation became. Because possession alone doesn't explain what kept happening. Austria wanted to press, Portugal wanted to defend and counter, Belgium wanted an open game, France wanted space to attack, Argentina wanted to dominate the middle. 5 completely different teams, 5 completely different ideas. Yet somehow they all ended up playing a game that suited Spain. That doesn't happen by accident. And that's when I started wondering if I'd misunderstood this team completely. Maybe this story isn't really about possession. Maybe it isn't even about pressing. Maybe those are just the tools. The real story is what Spain quietly does to the team on the other side. And once I started watching their opponents instead of the ball, their entire World Cup suddenly made a lot more sense. The first match that really made me stop and think was Austria. Before kickoff, everyone talked about their press. Win the ball high, disrupt Spain's rhythm, attack before they could settle. And early on, that's exactly what they tried to do. But after a while, something felt different. Austria was still pressing, but it didn't feel like their press anymore. They weren't forcing mistakes, they weren't creating chaos, they were simply chasing the ball. I thought that was just Spain's technical quality. Great players can play through pressure, that wasn't exactly surprising. But then Portugal happened, a completely different opponent, a completely different game plan. Portugal were happy to stay compact, protect space, wait for transitions. Yet somehow the match started feeling strangely familiar. Portugal also spent far longer defending than they wanted. Then Belgium. Same story. That's when I stopped watching Spain. Instead, I started watching the players without the ball. How often were they sprinting across the pitch? How often were they abandoning the positions they actually wanted to defend? How often were they adjusting to Spain instead of executing their own plan? That's when everything finally clicked. Spain weren't beating teams with one magical tactical idea. They were forcing dozens of tiny decisions. Should the winger press or stay with the fullback? Should the midfielder step out or protect the space behind him? Should the backline push higher or stay compact? None of those decisions were especially difficult. The problem was, Spain never stopped asking. Again, and again, and again. Eventually, every opponent gave away something. The winger pressed half a second later. The midfield dropped a little deeper. The defence became a little more cautious. Each compromise looked insignificant. Together, they completely changed the match. And by the end, Spain hadn't just beaten the opposition. They'd quietly taken them away from the football they actually wanted to play. The more I watched Spain, the more one thing stood out. They don't always try to win the ball back immediately. The strange part was, that felt completely backwards. Because when we think about pressing, we imagine players sprinting towards the ball. Spain often do something much quieter. The first defender isn't trying to make the tackle. He's trying to take away your best option. If the centre-back wants to play through the middle, someone is already blocking that lane. If he looks wide, Spain have already shifted across. So what usually happens? The safe pass. Backwards. Or sideways. The opponent still has possession, but something important has already changed. They're no longer choosing where the game goes. Spain are. Every sideways pass gives Spain another few seconds. Seconds for the midfield to recover, seconds for the defensive line to step higher, seconds for every player to move into the next position. By the time the opponent finally sees a forward pass, Spain are already waiting. I noticed this most against France. Their biggest strength is attacking before the defense can settle. Spain almost never allowed that moment to exist. Not because they kept winning tackles, because they kept delaying the attack. One extra touch, one extra pass, one extra second. At this level, that's often the difference between attacking an organised defence and attacking an exposed one. That's why Spain's press looks so effective. Not because they're constantly chasing the ball, because by the time they do press, they already know where it's going. One thing surprised me more than anything else. Spain rarely force dramatic mistakes. They don't usually overwhelm teams in one moment. Instead, they make football feel just a little bit harder. Imagine defending against them. The first 20 seconds feel completely normal. Your shape is good, everyone knows their job. Then Spain switch the play. The whole block slides across. Nothing dangerous yet. Then another switch, another adjustment, another short sprint. Still no chance, still no shot. But your winger has already tracked 40 metres, your midfield has shifted from one side to the other, your fullback has stepped out, recovered, and stepped out again. Nobody has done anything wrong. They're just working. Then Spain ask another question. Do you press or stay? Follow the runner or protect the space? Each decision seems small, none of them feels decisive. Until one player hesitates, half a second. That's all Spain need. A passing lane opens, a midfielder receives facing forward. Suddenly, the attack finally arrives. Watching it back, I realised something. Spain weren't using possession to dominate the statistics. They were using possession to move people. The goals often came at the end, but the real work had already been done 2 minutes earlier. By the time Spain reached the final, I thought I understood what they were doing, little by little. They took opponents away from the football they wanted to play. But then there was Argentina. And honestly, I wasn't sure Spain could do the same thing against them, because if there was one team that had solved almost every problem during this World Cup, it was Argentina. They didn't rely on one style. Some matches they controlled possession, others they defended deeper, sometimes they built patiently, other times they attacked much more directly. Whatever the game demanded, they usually found an answer. There was another reason I believed they could challenge Spain. Argentina actually wanted to play where Spain wanted to defend, through the middle. Vertical passes, quick combinations, third-man movements, constant rotations. It had been one of the biggest reasons they reached the final. So I expected a very different game. Instead, I noticed something much smaller. Every time Argentina recovered the ball, their first decision was becoming more cautious. Instead of turning forward, the first pass often went backwards, not because they wanted to retreat, because Spain were already surrounding the ball. That tiny moment completely changed how I saw the final. Argentina weren't building attacks anymore, they were escaping pressure, and once that became the priority, those quick combinations through the middle became much harder to find. Not because Argentina had forgotten how to play, because Spain had quietly taken away the situations where those strengths normally appeared. Spain weren't stopping Argentina from playing football, they were stopping Argentina from playing their football. I can't remember many moments when a match genuinely felt like it was slipping away from Spain at this World Cup. That doesn't mean they dominated every minute. They didn't. There were moments when opponents pushed them back, moments when Spain had to defend, moments when they lost possession. But somehow the match always drifted back to the rhythm Spain wanted. And I don't think that happened by chance. Most football matches eventually become chaotic. One transition, one misplaced pass, one spell of momentum, everything changes. Spain rarely allowed those moments to grow. Sometimes they slowed the game with possession, sometimes with a simple foul, sometimes with nothing more than a calm pass that took the pressure away. None of those moments looked spectacular. Most people probably never noticed them, but over 90 minutes, they quietly shaped the entire match. And maybe that's what I'll remember most about this team. Not the possession, not the pressing, but their ability to make every game slowly become the game they wanted to play. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe Spain's success really was just about having better players than everyone else. But after spending hours rewatching this World Cup, I don't think that's what I'll remember. I'll remember a team that quietly changed matches, without most people even noticing it. A team that rarely forced opponents to abandon their plan, but somehow made them drift away from it anyway. And honestly, I think that's much harder to do. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know what you think in the comments. And if there are any other teams, players or tactical stories you'd like me to analyze, let me know as well. And if you enjoy football content like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.